Jai Hind, this is Brigadier Hemant Mahajan. Subject we are going to talk today is a book review of a very important book written by Shri RajivMalhotra and Vijaya. The name of the book is Snakes in Ganga, Breaking India 2.0. About 15 days back, I had covered first part of the book and it was very well received. So therefore today I will cover the second part. Why the need to cover second part is that the book is over 800 pages. It has got bibliography of nearly 50 pages. It has got footnotes of nearly 100 pages. It's a very deeply researched book which tells you many dangers that are present to India. What Indians do not understand is, or most of us think, that we have a danger from either Pakistan or from China. We cannot have a danger from the United States of America because it's a friend. It is like democracy as India is. But unfortunately, there are certain institutions, there are certain universities, there are few in the US media, there are few intellectuals, there are few NGOs who are anti-India and who want to break India by dividing it into caste and creating problems for us, etc. So this is what I am going to cover as a part 2 of my book, and very briefly in next 15 minutes we will talk about it. Earlier part I had covered as to why the book was called Snakes in Ganga. The next I covered was how caste and racism is mixed, and most important, why India needs to counter this before it is too late. Now what I will cover will be the dangerous Afro-Dalit project that the Americans are running to show Dalits in India as the blacks of India, propagating a wrong theory of foreign invasions by the Aryans, meaning the Aryans were not Indians and they came from outside, and all the problem that we have today is because of the Aryans. Then funding activity which takes place from the USA and from some European countries which is inimical to India's security and sovereignty. Also, how should we stop this intellectual support which is given to the subversive elements in India like the Khalistanis, the Kashmiri terrorists, the left-wing extremists, or the radicalized people who are there. They are supported by many intellectuals outside, especially in the USA. And also the most important place, where are all these activities taking place. Now first let us cover the first book which Dr. Rajiv Malhotra has written, and the byline is of Breaking India 2.0 says that there are new dangers that have emerged as compared to his earlier book. And the brief summary of what the earlier dangers were is what I will cover in my next few minutes. First, in 1990s, he met an African American scholar at one of the universities who told him that he had just come back from a trip from India and he was working on an Afro-Dalit project. It was a US operated and financed project which said that Dalit movement using American cultural and historical lens. What they were basically saying was the whites of America were the upper caste in India and the blacks in America were the Dalits, and they were trying to say whatever slaves and other issues which the blacks had to undergo, something similar treatment is meted to the other backward communities in India. What we have to understand is this is their plan to divide India on the basis of caste, etc. All individuals, all organizations, all NGOs from outside who are running these kind of programs in India must be stopped, must be blacklisted. Because if India has to prosper as a country and become the third or the fourth largest economy in the world, third or fourth most powerful country in the world, then we have to be united and work hard. Everybody should work hard. Now this propagating this wrong theory of foreign Aryans is one point that I want to cover. When Rajiv Malhotra was studying about Aryans as to who they were and whether the origin of Sanskrit and Vedas was an import by the invaders who were not indigenous to India, were they different than the Dravidians. What came out in front of him was that during the British time in the 19th century, a story was fabricated that Aryans came from outside. They were initially not Indians, and therefore they were different than Dravidians, who were the original citizens of this particular country. Now, obviously, this is false. Today, a number of books have been written. In a historic book written by one French author called Michel Daniot, he has proved that the theory of Aryan invasion was wrong. That is, if at all the proof was required. Everybody knows that Aryans were original inhabitants of this country, and Michel Daniot was actually a student of Indian civilization, culture, history, etc., and he had widely researched on this topic. Another European or another American scholar called David Foley also came to the same conclusion. There have been n number of Indian historians who have talked about as to how the Aryans were the original habitants of India. So therefore, this is without doubt. Unfortunately, when the history of our country was written, especially the school books, etc., many generations swallowed a myth that Aryans came from outside, and because of the Aryans, all the problems that we face in today's India, the social problems, etc., it is because of them. This is not correct. This subversion which is there in our history needs to be countered. Also, when he was there, he saw that US church was funding lot of activities in India with popularly advertised campaigns such as Save Poor Children, Feed Them, Clothe Them, Educate Them, etc. But this money was mostly misused for indoctrination and conversion activities. He also had lot of debates with the US think tanks, with the independent scholars, with human rights groups, with academics on the treatment of Indian society by the Americans. Americans thought that India was a curse to the world and India needs to be improved, and who would improve them? The Americans would do it, the American society would do it. Obviously this was wrong. Now this funding activity which was taking place, he decided to track down the major organizations who were promulgating various anti-Indian theories. He also saw some people heading political campaigns which resulted prosecution of India on the grounds of human violation. His research included the money trail which was used by under the provisions of financial disclosures in USA. He was studying the promotion material which these institutions used to give to Indians, and he found he also started monitoring their conferences. He started monitoring their workshops. He started looking at the publications which they were issued, and he saw the individuals who were behind this, the NGOs behind this, and he realized that which should ring an alarm bell for every concerned Indian about India's national security, that India was the prime target of a huge enterprise network of organizations, individuals, NGOs, etc., who were intensely devoted to the task of creating a separatist identity for many castes, separatist history, even religion was used for as a weapon for vulnerable sections of the India, and the nexus included not only the church, not only the government bodies, not only few organizations, but also private think tanks and academics. While on the surface of it, all of them appeared to be separate, but they were not isolated. In fact, it was a very well run campaign that was there, which was well coordinated, well funded from US and Europe. Now this was actually very shocking. It was very dangerous. Shri Rajiv Malhotra, who has done research on all anti-Indian activities in the USA, has done a very comprehensive research, and this should act as an eye-opener for anybody and everybody in India who is concerned about our country. He deserves to be complimented for his painstaking research. If you recall, the Supreme Court on 14th of November 22 said that religious conversion by means of force, by allurement or by fraud may ultimately affect India's national security, freedom of religion and conscience of the citizen. So it directed centers to step in and clarify as to what it does to curb the compulsory or deceitful religious conversion. Imagine The same thing had been said by Rajiv Malhotra in 2011 in his book Breaking India 1.0. Now, also the institutions in USA provide intellectual support to subversive elements in India, be it Khalistani, be it Kashmiri, be it let's say the northeast insurgent groups here and there, even the left wing extremists, etc. So he started wondering whether this campaign to mobilize Dalits, mobilize Dravidians, mobilize others was a part of a foreign policy of Western countries, or was it just done by few people? Then he realized that many such institutions in America were weaponizing our militancy, weaponizing our political fragmentation, and using it to break India. And after a lot of data became available, then he published it in the form of a book. India as a country has finally started dealing with the subversive elements both from abroad and within the country. You would remember that over 10,000 NGOs were banned because they were receiving foreign contributions to the tune of 50,000 crores to 60,000 crores, and they were using funds for a purpose other than what it was meant for. Now this fund flow by FCRA route has stopped, but still some money is coming by the Hawala rate. What we have to understand is that the subversive elements come in all shapes and sizes. They keep on changing their tactics. So therefore, the India has to keep its eyes and ears open and ensure that the new threats are identified immediately and we deal with them under the laws of our land. The next part that I will talk about will be what he calls as snakes, how they are nurtured in the American universities. These negative forces have started infiltrating in India's institutions, polluting them with toxins to retard India's economic progress. They basically tell them that lot of injustice has been done to you, you are not progressing, so therefore you should resort to violence, you should blame the Indian government, you should blame the higher caste in India, etc. So this book also explains that many of the Indian corporate worlds, many of them well known, many of them not so well known, unknowingly or unknowingly, consciously or unconsciously, are actively sponsoring such negative forces. The book says that these snakes are being nurtured in American Ivy universities such as the Harvard, etc. The production of anti-India knowledge involves a large number of Indians at every level, but overall leadership of all of them at the highest level is with the Westerners. Many bright young Indians are lured into Harvard's orbit, tutored and brainwashed before they are exported back to India to spread the dangerous thinking that India is not one country, Indians are divided, lot of injustice is done there. Now the authors have examined many snake nests in Harvard University, various departments of Harvard University as public health, humanities, South Asia studies, etc. And he's come to a conclusion that they are carrying out a very dangerous act. Every Indian has to understand as to what kind of dangers arise from this kind of a thinking which divides India on the basis of caste, religion, etc. This has to stop. Many of these snakes are camouflaged in various names such as human rights group. They say we are working for human rights. They say we are working for social justice. They say we are working for women empowerment. They say we are working for pluralism. They say we are working for free speech. We are working for democracy. But remember, the kind of funding that is done to break India, this is not been done in any autocratic country. Why have they chosen India when it's a democratic country, when it chooses its government after every 5 years? There are elections at Panchayat level, there are elections at Jilla Parishad level, there are elections at Assembly level, then there are elections at Lok Sabha level. So any and every process in our country today is democratic, and we are the largest democracy in India and one of the most mature. So why target us? Why not target countries, let's say, which are autocratic? There are many autocratic countries, say North Korea for one, Iran is another. In addition to that, China is the biggest autocracy the world has ever produced. they don't dare to target them because they are scared of China, while they find India is a soft target. India can be targeted because initially the Indians themselves were a part of this subversive system. Indians were not bothered under the name of free speech. They were busy cursing own country. In fact, recently in a seminar of India Today, one of the European scholars was telling that the biggest enemy India has today are few Indians who are Indians by birth, but they are against India and they curse anything and everything in our country. So how do you change their mindset? Now, somehow, because of our appreciation of the white skin, because of white men that we like, we have started copying anything and everything from America. Well, some of it is good, but a lot of it does not suit the Indian traditions. What we have to understand is the DNA of all the snakes which are nurtured in Harvard is basically Marxism. Now, Marxism was a communist ideology, but now they have converted Marxism to what is called as the critical race theory, which simply means that the blacks blacks in USA are oppressed by the whites there, and similarly they have converted this critical race theory into a critical caste theory, in which they say the upper caste in India are doing a lot of injustice and doing a lot of injustice to the lower caste there. Now, unfortunately, this is not true. Today, we know that in our country, I mean, people of any caste and every religion have risen to the highest positions in various fields, be it Prime Minister of India, President, bureaucracy, police, armed forces, etc. So this kind of a propaganda which is done is simply not true. What the book also points out is that China does not engage Harvard as far as social justice or human rights are concerned. They in fact misuse Harvard by they misuse Harvard by using them and stealing their scientific research, etc. So therefore, India should have its own Indian agenda, and there are many Indian corporates like the Azim Premjis, Anand Mahindra, Lakshmi Mittal, Ajay Piramal, etc., who are financing various researches there. Now, these corporates should finance a research only if it helps India and not any research which is anti-India. We have written a lot about India's rise as economic terms. Today we are the fifth largest economy and third largest in terms of power purchasing parity. But unless India's overall core is kept intact, we will not prosper. If we let America, institutions in America divide us, we will not be able to progress as rapidly. And the various fault lines which RajivMalhotra and Mrs. Vijaya has said has to be understood by every Indian. We have to take steps so that the snakes which are there are tackled in time and we are able to stop all those dangers before it is too late. I'll stop here. If you have liked this video, like it and share it with as many people as possible. Jai Hind.